Okay. Hey, you know what time it is. Wednesday evening. Welcome to the Shaker Heights. Experiences may vary. We have a special guest coming live and direct all the way from Seattle. I think he took we're at the Onaway Rapid stop in our minds. Anyway, he's an artist, musician. He was the OG of Warrington Road and now a major Seattle music advocate. He'll tell you what he does. Anyway, I'd like to bring to the stage Ben London. There we go. Oops, I was slow on that.
All right.
Move to the middle. There we go.
Yes. Welcome, Ben. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you guys as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, man, was it Onaway Rapid Stop? Is that where we're?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So I moved to Shaker in August of '78, and so for sixth grade. And I remember walking down to Onaway and them walking me up the stairs, the principal, and they had to choose between two teachers for sixth grade, and I think I got the worst end of the deal because I got Mr. Borzi, and a bunch of the other people were in the other class, but it was cool. It was cool. It was quite an adjustment from where I'd been before coming into the Shaker school system.
What brought you all to Shaker? Like, what brought your family? Like, are you the only kid, or you got?
No, I've got an older brother. My brother Jake. He went to Shaker as well, class of '81.
Okay.
And so my dad is an academic. He's like a college professor, but he's a composer and a conductor and a musician. And so we moved to Seattle, we moved to Cleveland in '78 when he became the chair of the music department at Cleveland State.
Oh, wow.
And so we got there, and I wasn't there for when they were looking for a house, but we bought our house from the Levert family of OJ's fame.
They just keep coming up. Wow.
That's
On
right.
Warrington and Ashby.
Yes.
And
Next to Greg Young.
yeah, exactly. Greg, who was one of my closest friends growing up. And I remember my dad saying that when they were touring houses, because they were looking between Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights, and they went in that house and saw the gold records on the wall. And he was like, "This is the place. This is the place. Success has happened in this house. It's going to drip onto us as well." So,
that's
but man,
man.
granted, it was the '70s, but we had like orange carpet and floral foil wallpaper. I mean, it was tricked out in a pretty awesome way, and so no, it was a good house for us for sure.
Shout out to Gerald and Sean Levert, because I believe they moved from there. They moved over to North Park, so they had their come up.
They did.
Yeah.
I think they bought Senator Metzenbaum's house or something like that. It was like a big ass house. I remember going to a party there once.
Yes. They had like the swimming pool and the party and everything.
In the days before cell phones, you could get lost from the other people you were with at a party like that.
Yeah.
Cruising around trying to find everybody else.
Wow. But, I mean, that's kind of cool, man, because, you're already coming from a music-based family. So going into that thing, that was alignment for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering what were your first your first instruments that you picked up, and how old were you?
So I think I started piano lessons when I was like in kindergarten or something like that. And, just plinked around on it. It wasn't that great. And then started playing violin early on. And so I was still doing that when I got to Shaker. And actually, I think it was for Christmas of sixth grade. My brother wanted to get an electric guitar. And my dad knew Dick Lurie. I don't know if you remember the Dick Lurie Guitar Studio in Cleveland Heights.
Oh, wow.
So we went down there. And my dad was like, "Do you want something?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll play bass because it's 4 strings like a violin." And so I got a bass. And then, I don't know, the way things happen. I mean, I think I was in a band with the Arnwine brothers and John Phillips and Doug Klein within like 2 months or something like that. And we played at our 6th grade talent show.
Wow.
Or we stood on the stage with instruments. I can't attest. We actually played.
So what do you remember about that band? I mean, so this was your first band, and this was sixth grade, Onaway, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it was awesome. I mean, it's like trying to figure out molecular biology at that point, right? Or something like that. You're like, how did they do that? Not realizing how actually easy it is to learn a couple of chords on the guitar or something like that. But no, it was cool. I mean, if you think about that period of time, I mean, music was just the thing. I mean, it was like there was only a couple TV channels. Movies were, you had to pay a lot of money to go to movies. So it seemed like most of our heroes generationally were music folks. And and coming out of that time of like 60s, 70s, like just amazing records that have been made and like what was brewing up. And, I don't know how it happened, but I think we ended up with the first Van Halen record in like 1978 or something, or 79. And it was like proselytizing the entire suburb. It seemed like all of a sudden everybody overnight was like Van Halen all the time.
Wow. Go ahead.
When I think of Shaker Heights, I always think of that Van Halen 1 album. That seems like everyone, all the rockers, were really in tune with that album.
And you also bring up something that I think is still very visceral: the lost art of like going to buy a record or a cassette and sitting down and playing that thing and like listening.
I have an amazing story that I probably talk about like once a year to people, and that I have a memory of when Back in Black came out, the AC/DC record, and Lee Weinstock had convinced his mom to go to the store and buy it on the day it came out, and going over to his house in his bedroom and listening to that album from beginning to end the day it came out, and just being there just like, and a bunch of people at Shaker had seen AC/DC the year before or something. They'd seen them on the Highway to Hell tour, or like I think AC/DC played one of their first American dates at the Monsters of Rock thing at the stadium.
Oh yes, yes.
And so there was a bunch of people whose parents probably had like work tickets or something to take them to the Monsters of Rock. And what resonates with 5th and 6th graders more than a guy running around with a backpack on his like guitar like Angus Young or something like that. And so but no, I got turned on to so much great music, and there were people like Lee Weinstock, John Dent were definitely people that were flying the flag for a bunch of stuff. The Arnwine brothers were really instrumental on discovery and sharing stuff. And, just we all kind of grew up together listening to all this stuff and sharing records, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
That was 81. That was a pivotal time because Bon Scott was replaced by Johnson.
Brian Johnson.
Of AC, Brian Johnson. And we went, I know I've told this story on this podcast.
No, I don't think so.
But there's two seminal events that introduced me to rock and roll. One was Tim Elliott's band at Byron, Attic, and they were playing More Than a Feeling. And then I went to see, I think it was Arnwine, and I know John Henry Johnson was singing, and I think Steve Smith was on bass. I don't know what band that was, but they were playing United by Judas Priest. Now to see a bunch of black kids in 1981 playing in an elementary school gym, United, I mean, like almost kind of like a deep cut. And then that week I joined the Columbia Records and Tape Club, and then later I joined BMG, and then my journey of rock had just begun at that point.
Well, that's so awesome. I mean, the thing that I felt about Shaker, particularly like from that dynamic, is that I never really thought twice about that it was white kids or black kids listening to music or hanging out. It was just the kids that were on the block doing it. And it was, I don't know if it was like some sort of thing, and maybe you folks have some thoughts on this, but I mean, it's just kind of the music that was around. And I think when you're a kid, you just kind of want to fit in and want to listen to what's going on. But it got exposed to a bunch of stuff, and then it kind of went the other direction in the mid 80s, 82, 83, with like Prince and Michael Jackson, and like, I mean, by the end of high school, I don't think I was listening to any music that was made by traditionally white people. It was like all like, you know, I think I, you know, it was Prince and the Time and the Dazz Band, and you know, I remember, you know, we'd go down. I remember I have another seminal memory is like going with Melvin and Kevin Arnwine down to see the Fresh Festival at Public Hall, and seeing like the Fat Boys and Nucleus and gosh, who else? Run DMC and a bunch of people. And you know, I mean, what? How is it that I was there to see that? I'm even shocked myself that I got to see some of this seminal hip hop stuff back then. And again, it was just the fact that through proximity, we all really rubbed off each other in
very true,
hopefully in great ways. Yeah.
Well, I like to remember Louis Schechter, rest in peace. How influential I was. There was a special class after school that he and the male librarian sponsored. It was a video club, and he was huge in Russell Mulcahy and Duran Duran, and that fueled me because I was going to see. I went to see all those new wave bands back then, and it was very affordable going to Lakewood. I mean, that started kind of off. That was more towards college, I guess, after we graduated. But I saw ABC at the Agora. I saw Thomas Dolby, and I'm still. I just saw ABC a couple of weeks ago. I drove to Cleveland to see them, and Cleveland's a great venue for a lot of those bands. And we're lucky to have had WMMS to.
By all means, and not to mention all the college radio stations that we had there that were pumping all kinds of stuff. And what was it, WZAK that did like was it the Pack Jams or the Monster Mixes? And
Dean
stuff?
Rufus,
like,
WDMT.
Right.
Yeah, all that stuff. And then not to mention kind of having a connective tissue to like what New York City, and there were a lot of kids from our city that were going there to college, and they'd come home with tapes, and we'd like copy the tapes and different stuff like that. It was good. It was a good time.
I remember, you know, that Greg Young lived next door to you, and he was a musician as well. Right.
Yeah, So kind of like we had that first band at Onaway, and then John Phillips, basically that same band kind of got a little bit better, and we kind of formed this heavy metal band called Livewire.
Yes.
Kevin Arnwine was the singer of, and Mel was the drummer, and John Phillips and stuff. And we did that for a couple of years, and then I was ceremoniously dismissed from that band.
Whoa!
And Steve Smith replaced me, which is great. I think that was all good. But then around that point, I was really kind of getting out of metal and getting kind of more into punk and alternative music. And at that point, Rob Barrick and Greg Young and I formed a Ramones cover band called Act of Congress that we played. I remember we played in the auditorium at Woodbury when we were like in 8th or 9th grade or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like being in a band? Were you cool around all your classmates? And did you?
No. I mean, there were people, I'll say to this day, like Mel Arnwine is one cool dude. I was not Mel Arnwine. Let's just put it like that, you know. You know, I was this like formally or evolving from being a fat kid into a teenager, and like loved music and played guitar. But I don't know. I felt like an outcast from the day I got to Shaker. I mean, I just grew up in a much more kind of different environment, and Shaker was like going to the Ivy League or something like that. It was pretty wild.
I remember your presence. I mean, you don't know me, but I remember seeing you around with a long, like, dark coat, a pea coat. Did you wear that? I remember that.
Yeah, that must have been my John Hughes phase, right? So I got into New Wave, and you know, I remember I was actually just in Montreal a week or two ago, and that's where I bought that coat on a vacation.
Oh wow! Okay, full circle.
And got that and got a beret, and you know, I think I started smoking jetons or something at that point. You know,
were you thrifting?
Oh,
was that?
Oh yeah. I got
Lakewood and go to thrift. Yeah.
Clove cigarettes.
Cleveland had the best Clove cigarettes, the training wheels of cigarettes.
Yeah, right.
But Cleveland had the best thrift back then because, you know, it was while it was a working class town, there were a lot of upscale people, and like people would buy clothes that would last, and then they'd wear them twice, and then they'd end up 30 years later in the thrift stores. And I got so much great stuff back then.
And that was before, thrifting really took off into what it is today now. It's almost like it got mainstream commercialized,
It did. It did.
I've run into some. My ears or my eyes are. I'm a fanboy, I guess. And Eric Carmen was from Lyndhurst or somewhere. And when they built Legacy Village, they had an Apple store, and I had seen Eric Carmen there before. Also, rest in peace. And I thought I'd approach him, and he ran from me like I was going to rob him or something. But we would run into Michael Stanley at Beechwood Mall, and when my son was born, we stopped at there is some front-facing. What is it? Cedar, those stores off of Cedar, right before the mall. There was a hat, like a trucker's hat, one of those foam hat with mesh, and it said, what did it say on it? It said Steely Dan on it. So there weren't any people at the booth, and I was wondering who was going to come sit at the booth. And some people came, and they were elderly people. And the woman goes, "Do you know who I am? I'm Steely Dan's mom." And I said, "No." I said, "You're probably not Steely Dan's mom. You're either Donald Fagen's mom or you're Walter Egan's mom." And she was Donald Fagen's mother. And she had moved to Beechwood to be with her daughter that was having a tough pregnancy. And she moved from New Jersey and lived in Beechwood. It's just these little stories,
It's like People Magazine stars. They're just like us, right? Their parents and stuff.
Yeah, it's great. I had to share that story. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I love those sorts of things. It's doing this stuff for so long. I was telling somebody this story the other day too, that I loved the Clash growing up. Got turned on by my brother. I remember going to see them with Andy Jacobs. Do you remember? I don't know if you guys knew Andy. He went to Woodbury, and then his parents made him go to private school for high school.
I remember the name, Andy Jacobs.
Yeah, and we went and saw the Clash at a movie theater in Akron, Ohio. It was before Combat Rock came out or something.
Okay.
Wow.
And Curtis Blow opened for them. It was the first time that I saw
79. That had to be 79.
Yeah. It was amazing. And later in life, I got to do something with Joe Strummer before he passed away. And at one point, I'm walking out where I'm working, and this guy walks up to me asking how to get on this train that's you can see in the distance. And I'm just like, "Well, hey, Joe Strummer, you just walk that way," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sort of like, there's been some moments like that where I'm feeling like if I could only go back to being my teenage self, I would never believe you in a million years. If you're like, "Oh yeah, you're going to meet and then get to hang out with Joe Strummer that night and have drinks and stuff later." I always appreciate those opportunities and acknowledge them for being something that would really, really be special to me as a young person. And are still special now, but it's pretty cool.
So in high school, did you know that you were going to pursue music as a career? Was that?
Well, no, I guess not. I mean, I think it's something I aspired to do, but the world's a much different place now where people think or can think more about that. Because anybody that was thinking about music as a career back then, like your parents would slap you in the face or wash your face, your mouth out with soap for saying stuff like that. Like even with my dad being a musician, he was always like, "You got to have something to fall back on." So, I mean, in all honesty, I was not a great student academically at Shaker, and so I wasn't sure what I was going to do, if I was even going to go to college when we were done.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really. Well, I played in bands and stuff, but really when I went to college, I connected with a bunch of other folks where that really got nurtured. And that's where, by the time I graduated, the reason I moved to Seattle is there was a couple bands of us that had been doing stuff and making records while we were in college, and we wanted to move out to Seattle, not knowing that it was going to be the greatest place in the world at that moment to go be a musician, because,
So why did you choose Seattle?
My junior year of college, I was lucky enough to tour America with a play, doing the music for a play that was created by our college. And so I toured. We did about 30 dates on the East Coast and the West Coast. And we ended up in Seattle in August, which is really the nicest time of year. We get about 3 months of amazing weather every year. We call it amnesia weather because it allows you to forget about the other 9 months. So I came through in August and was like, this is great. And so our collective group, I went to this little college near Columbus called Antioch College. That's
yes.
in Yellow Springs. It's where Dave Chappelle lives now. I actually went to college with his sister Felicia and did this tour of America with Felicia. Was one of the people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But that we were trying to decide where to move after college, and New York and LA seemed too expensive. Like you'd have to work all the time just to live, let alone create. And San Francisco, kind of the same sort of way, and Chicago felt too close. And so myself and my roommate from college was doing an environmental summer classroom thing, was in Seattle. And we were like, this seems like a cool place. And we knew of a couple bands at that point that had put out indie records, like Soundgarden's first record had come out on SST. And there was a band called Skin Yard and a few other bands like that. And we were sort of like, well, if they can do it. And that was the dream at that point, to kind of get on a bigger indie label. And lo and behold, we get there, and it's like within a year. I got here August of '89, and I think Nevermind was beginning of 1991 or something. And then all of a sudden it's like Nirvana, boom, Pearl Jam, boom, Soundgarden, boom, Alice in Chains, boom. And then before you know it, like 30 plus bands, including my own at one point, all got
wow. So were you friends with those groups? Did you run into those guys?
At that point, early on, just moving to town, no, I didn't really know them. But it was a relatively small music scene at that point. There was one venue that kind of did more kind of punk rock and alternative music. And after going to shows there with my group of people that I moved out from Ohio with, literally after a couple of weeks, people started coming up and saying, "Hey, are you guys new in town? We haven't seen you around before," because it was so small.
Right.
But no, got to know those folks, and really at that point, Nirvana and Soundgarden and those things, they weren't in town much because they were touring so much. They were going out. But
what about Tina Marie Bell, Bam Bam? Any stories?
Oh yeah, how do you know about Tina? So I did not know Tina. I know her husband, who's since passed away, who was the guitar player in that band. He went on and ran a sound company. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But they were a really interesting band. Or what's cool is that they're getting their due kind of posthumously. But I never got to see them live. So.
Wow. Yeah. Her son works in the film and TV world. TJ Martin.
Yeah, I think he won like an Academy Award maybe for
something. Yeah, last couple of years.
In fact, I don't know where it is now, but I think he was working on a multi-part series for Showtime or something on the Seattle music scene. I know he was in town doing interviews for a couple of years last year for several months, something like that.
Yeah. So going back down to Antioch, Yellow Springs. Was it like a culture shock in some ways, coming from Shaker, coming down? Because I feel like Antioch is like anomaly in Ohio, like Asheville is, North Carolina,
yeah,
yada yada.
It's definitely where the hippie. I will say that in that area is one of the largest pot producing regions in the U.S. Or in the Midwest. I think that somewhere in that area was providing a lot of the green bud to other parts of the 3-state region or something like that. But no, it was a bit of a culture shock. So my mom actually went there.
Okay.
But we didn't really go down there and hang out or anything. And again, I think my parents, my dad was a college professor and academic and stuff, and the thought of their youngest son not going to college, that was kind of like not acceptable. And being a parent now, I understand that things that you do to push your kids or whatever, but they were sort of like, I applied a bunch of places, didn't get in. I think I could have gone to Ohio State, maybe, but I don't know. I think it was like on the waiting list or something for Ohio State, which tells you something in Ohio State. And so actually, Lori Shavers, if you remember Lori, that was in her class, she had gone to Antioch and she was dating Mel Arnwine.
Yeah. Where is she?
And I don't know. I heard, and she moved out to LA at one point, and I think was doing some acting or stuff at some point. I haven't heard in years. So
have you go online and look for Stevie Wonder's Fun Day from the.
I've heard about that. She's in the video.
She's in the video.
Yeah. So Mel and I went down there for he wanted to visit her and I wanted to visit the college, and I went down there and ended up having a really good time, and it just felt like, man, this looks cool to me. And,
right. Mom approved, so all good.
Yeah, no, it was. And the cool thing about that college was that it had what was called a cooperative education program. So we studied for 6 months and we worked for 6 months of each year.
Oh, okay.
So for example, I was on campus fall and winter quarter, and then I moved to New York City and was there for spring and summer of my freshman year, and then did similar other stuff my other 4 years. So it gave me that chance. I think if I'd just been in the four walls of that tiny little town for 4 years, that might have driven anyone crazy. So that was.
Did I miss something? What was your major? Did I miss what your major? Did you say what your major was?
I have a very useful visual arts degree.
Okay. Did you paint that in the background? Is that your painting?
I didn't. That's a Steve Keen. I don't know if you know who Steve Keen is. Like a speed painter. He's made over 50,000 or 500,000 paintings. Check him out online.
Okay.
He sells all of his paintings. You can order 10 of them for $70 online, sort of thing.
Oh, that's cool. That's an approach.
And he's done some he did a Pavement album cover and different bands and stuff like that.
So when you were into the alternative scene, let's put it that way, and you had a punk band, were you wearing punk garb, and were you all punked out, or did you have the safety pin through your nose or through your ear?
No, that was never me, because that always felt. I mean, we're all wearing a costume of some sort, right? Particularly at that age, you're defining yourself by your clothes. The dressing up with the mohawk and the safety pin in your nose always felt the same as dressing up like a rockabilly person or something. It felt like I was being a Civil War reenactor, something like that. A punk rock reenactor.
Yeah.
I think I was probably a little more coming out of the new wave thing, was a little more gothy, perhaps, probably more like Robert Smith or The Cure. I definitely had my hair further up than it is right now.
Yeah.
Wore a lot of black.
Here's a fun fact. Did you know the alternative press started in Cleveland? I know two people that worked. Were you familiar with that at that time?
I was.
I just learned about it.
Yeah, I felt a great sense of accomplishment when they reviewed a couple of my records in their later years and stuff like that. And I remember coming back at one point. We played when I was on tour. We played the Euclid Tavern. There was a great artist named Derek Hess, who used to book.
Yeah, I went to school with him. I went to Cleveland Institute of Art, and he did the poster.
Oh, awesome! Yeah,
started all that.
And I remember doing an interview with Scene Magazine, or with Anastasia
Pantasios.
Yeah. And I couldn't kind of get over, after reading her stuff growing up all the time, that I was talking to her for an interview. And
coming full circle.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was cool. And actually, I think when we played one of those shows, I think some Shaker folks came down, like John Dent, and I wasn't expecting him necessarily, because pre-email and cell phone, so it wasn't like, how would I even let people know I don't even know who Dent.
John Dent is Mr. Local Music. He's like the official local music videographer. He has. I tell him, I've told him in the past, save all this footage, because it's going to be important and worth something at some point.
I love every bit of that. And that John has been a massive fan of music his whole life. He's not really somebody that plays music. Had a short stint singing in Euphoria while we were in high school, or whatever the reggae band was. But just loves it, and goes out and sees. It seems like he goes out and sees music constantly. Yeah. And I mean, what's better? I don't know. To me, I'm not a very religious person, but man, standing in front of in a room with 100 people watching a great band is about as close to religion as I've ever gotten in my life.
So, who was some of your crew back in Shaker, and are you still like in touch?
Yeah, so I mean, like, in playing music and stuff, it was definitely like, the Arnwine brothers, Doug Klein / Joe Solo, John Phillips, Greg Young, Rob Barrick, folks like that. And then socially, I kind of floated a little bit, like definitely spent time with like Mel and Paul Bixler and Lee and John and the kind of partying crew, or however you'd want to call them.
The 85's Live crew, yes.
And then spent like junior, senior year, probably spent a lot more time hanging out with like John Mullins and Mike Schultz and people like that. And I'm sad. Did I hear recently that John maybe had a stroke recently or something? I was really sad.
Yeah, he's recovering. So shout out to John Mullins.
Yeah, for his recovery.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I mean, one of the cool things I thought about Shaker is that, we'd hang out in small groups, but you'd go to parties at people's houses, and it was just kind of everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd start off maybe in your small group. We'd go over to somebody's house and, drink beer or play quarters or something. And then you'd go to the bigger party and see everybody. People would hook up or whatever. And call it good and go home.
Did you get into any trouble? Did you do any sketchy stuff, or were you're a floater, but were you around any shenanigans?
I would say any of my shenanigans were probably more self-induced. They were more facing inwards than outwards. I wasn't. I didn't paint, or I didn't pour gasoline on the football field and spell out, 1985 or anything like that. But no, but it was cool. I mean, I was just into music. We went to a lot of concerts, talked about music a lot, played music, tried to do some other band things that didn't quite work out. We'd go out to the Mentor Headlands, to the Boogaloo Bash that Gabe promoted several times, stuff like that.
Yeah, those days of infamy. I got arrested.
You should make some T-shirts with that poster.
Yes, I still have it. Or John or Lee has that one. Has a copy of that poster. Yeah. So I remember those.
So your bands, okay. So when you graduated, you said you went to Seattle. So we're kind of going back and forth. What was?
Yeah.
Where did that go? Where did you take that?
Sure. So I moved out here with a band that I was in college called Big Brown House, and we did that. But we shared members with another band called the Gits. We all went to college together, and the Gits were really starting to take off, and it kind of became obvious to me at that point that was going to be two of the guys' main thing. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up forming a new band that was called Alcohol Funny Car with some folks that I met out here. And we were lucky enough that we were in an environment at that point where, we started playing shows. We started drawing more people to see us. We put out a first 7-inch, and then we got signed to an indie label here in town that had some other bands that were starting to break on it. And then because of proximity, I will not say we were not the best band in the world, but because of the time and the place, all of a sudden, before you know it, like every major label in America was coming around and sniffing. And so we flew to New York and LA a bunch and drank a lot of expense account drinks, did different things like that. And then finally, ended up doing our last record through BMG, and I jokingly refer to myself as a footnote of flannel, in that I did everything that Nirvana and Pearl Jam did except for sell millions of records. But they did a lot more, obviously.
I think about this quote: "Sign your name on the X. Trust me. Get a pack of Newports and some Puma sweats." That's from Third Base. About the industry,
or no doubt.
I just saw something about BMG. They were notorious for something, that record label.
They had Jive. Jive was under them. That was a big label.
I mean, they're all notorious.
I think they bought I don't know. I must have just saw it in a doc. It's not come. I thought maybe if you knew some history, it would jar something loose in my memory. But yeah. So it's the music industry. So what did you feel? I always hear horror stories about it, and I'm thinking, especially since streaming and Apple Music, it's really hard to make a living selling music nowadays.
No doubt. Well, it was never easy to make a living in the music business, right? I mean, that's one thing. But it's become even harder with streaming, just because it's just the haves and the have-nots. The chasm has gotten even wider.
Yeah.
And then it used to be that if you put out a record or a CD or something like that, you could at least sell them off the stage or the trunk of your car, and you could make some incremental revenue that helps push your project forward. Whereas now you can spend the same amount making a record and you put it up on Spotify, but if you're only getting, 10,000, 30,000, 100,000, basically 1 million streams is worth maybe about $4,000. And if you have to split that between the multiple, if you're in a group with multiple people, if you have management, you have, all that sort of stuff. So you got to really get that to scale to really start making the money. And so back in the 60s and 70s, it used to be you made a record or you went on tour to sell records because that's where you get your money. Yeah. Now you make a record to sell concert tickets.
Yes.
And the tough part about that is that people get older. You look at somebody like Tom Petty that probably shouldn't have been on the road, that was having hip issues, or Prince that were taking so much stuff to keep their bodies in shape, and it catches up with them. And nobody ever expects Michael Jordan to go still play a full playoffs game worth of basketball when he's in his 50s or his 60s, but we expect Paul McCartney to still go out and do it.
Well, I just saw a 78-year-old or 76-year-old Todd Rundgren. I'm a huge Todd Rundgren.
Oh, yeah.
And he's amazing. But he says, well, a lot of this, he even made a song about it. A lot of his profit comes from selling merchandise and his following. But he's on the road doing tribute concerts to the Beatles, to Pink Floyd, to anywhere he can make money, and it's sad, he should be able to relax at this. I mean, I'm sure he loves what he does, but he's on the road way too much.
Yeah,
way too much.
Well, I mean, we get used to a certain quality of life, right? So that's part of it. Yeah. And I think that it is making money, right? And you got to do it. And for a lot of these artists that lived off record sales forever, because it used to be if you had a hit record, it would sell for a long time, and the streaming revenue doesn't do that. But then it's real tough if you're used to being Todd Rundgren or Steven Tyler or one of these people, and all of a sudden people don't know who you are, or you don't get that table in the restaurant, or people, what's worse for somebody that wants attention than getting no attention, right? And so it's
well, is there money in production anymore? Because he used to be a huge producer, and he said,
I think that
with all the technology being on your computer, that I'm sure that's changed the game a lot.
Well, I think part of it is that the upfront money was never massive for being a producer. It was getting a percentage of the sales of the records, and since records don't sell. So if you got 10% of a $10 record, that's pretty good. If you get 10% of a 0.003% stream,
man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how they come up with these formulas and decide like what these things are worth. It's fascinating, I always felt that the record labels, especially with Apple Music, they blew it. Like they could have had their own version of Apple Music, and they could have opened up all of their archives, unreleased stuff, and made it available for folks. Maybe that would have cut down on bootlegging and sold it like Apple, but Apple beat them at their greedy game.
Well, what happened there, I mean, totally I agree with what you're saying, is that they didn't adapt to when Napster came online.
No.
And they thought they could litigate or something, and that they lost their chance to build new consumer behaviors.
Yeah, big time.
Something's free. It's really hard to charge money for it.
Yeah, big time. So
kudos to the water industry that's figured out a way to get people to pay for water.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse when
Oh
fresh
yes, it is.
water gets a little more hard to come by, especially in
Yeah.
the southwestern states. Welcome to the Terror Dome.
Just think if you're Kodak and you ignored the digital.
Yeah,
Here in Rochester, it was a technology hub.
yeah,
Xerox,
Yeah.
Kodak, Bosch, and all of that came through, and they just ignored it. And there are a lot
they
of empty
actually.
buildings.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I saw an article within the last couple of years. Like Kodak actually had a prototype for a digital camera,
Yes. Hmm.
and and they were just like, "No, we don't see the future of this." So
Well,
like,
they're probably like, we make our money selling film.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like that's where we make it. So if we introduce a digital camera, people won't buy film.
Well,
No,
they
I mean,
would
I
have.
just read. I think they just closed the final Kmart in the U.S. this week. I think I read.
wow,
And if growing up, if you had thought we'd live in a world that didn't have Sears or Kmart, like where, like, how is that even possible, right? You know.
Sears was everything, man. They had everything: the tools, the tough skins. They had everything.
I read that catalog year round, man. I was dreaming up stuff all the time, like, oh
Especially
man,
for
and then I'm
Christmas,
gonna
right?
get this, I'm gonna get
Oh
this,
yeah.
and then I'm gonna get that.
Get the train set, the Lionel train set or
No,
the Tyco.
no doubt.
I don't like how things are so easily available. I like the effort it takes to go and find rare albums or Gabe, I didn't tell you, you showed that 66 Batmobile by Corgi. I
Yeah.
wanted that as a kid and I never got it. Well, I did find it in Big Fun in
Okay.
Cleveland Heights.
Yes. Down there in
But
Covington.
you just sent me Corgi is remaking it. And of
Yeah.
course I bought it, but it just takes away from it. You like that the hard to get things, even though that they're $60 or $70, you enjoy that and hunting that down and trying to find that and network and get those things. I miss that about music. It's too
So
available.
I miss it. So much of kind of the 90s aesthetic or getting into that was rediscovering vintage instruments, right? And so when I tour and stuff back in the day, a lot of times we go to pawn shops in every city, like stuff looking for like old effects and guitars
yeah.
and stuff like that, to the point where I even would buy stuff and then sell it and help pay my rent when I got home from tours sometimes. And then eBay and all that stuff kind of ruined it. I mean, it used to be you go to a pawn shop, there was the coolest shit you'd ever seen in your life. And these days
Yeah.
you go to a pawn shop and I'm like, who would buy any of this? I don't even know what this is, because it's probably anything worth anything is probably already up on eBay.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of cheap stuff. Now, do you still find yourself going to record stores there in Seattle? Is that something that you do occasionally, or
I do. I'm at this point now where I probably have about, because I'm lucky enough that my parents lived in the same place for a long time, and so most of my vinyl made it out here eventually. So I probably have, I don't know, about 3,000 albums or something like that.
Yeah.
And, I'm more at the point now where and also working in the industry for a long time, particularly when I worked for the Grammys, I got given, I was
that's right. Yeah.
list and got given stuff everywhere. So I'm right at the point right now where I'm starting to think, what happens to this stuff now? And so I'm trying to maybe thin the herd or thinking about getting less stuff than more
Right.
stuff. But I love supporting emerging artists, so like I'm always happy.
Yeah, let's get into that. So, how did you make the transition from being a performer in a band? What was the era that happened, and what made you decide to pursue another path?
Well, I guess I jokingly say that the people decided when I was going to transition out of being a musician full time. No, at a certain point, we toured a bunch, and the crowds felt like they were starting to get smaller. There was kind of a sea change of what was happening, maybe musical tastes.
And what year? What was the era? And what was the name of this band that you were talking
I was in a band called Alcohol Funny Car. So it got to be about 96, something like that. And things were changing. And we'd been doing it for a while, and I just kind of was tired, and we kind of had some issues with drummers, finding the right one and stuff. And so we were just about potentially going to do a deal with a new label, and it just kind of felt like, I don't know.
Your heart wasn't in it.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to go to work for a tiny little indie label at that point. It's like a bridge. I just, it was somewhere between, it was probably making the same money I would have worked being a barista or something, but it was good and music connected. But it was at that point that I heard about, through a friend that met somebody at a party, that Paul Allen, who's one of the founders of Microsoft, was going to build a Jimi Hendrix museum.
Yes.
And I was like, wait a minute, what? And I had one of these like epiphany life moments where I was like, music, museum, I have an art degree, I'm a musician, all this sort of stuff. I was like, I have to work there.
Right.
And I kind of hooked and crooked my way into talking to some people there, and was like really hardcore, like, hey, I'd love to work here, love job. And they're kind of like, yeah, everybody would, buddy. What can we do for you? And then finally I was like, put my chips all in. I was like, can I intern here? And I was 26 or 27 at the time, and they were like, yeah, I guess so. Sure. I was like, can I intern full time? And they were sort of like, nobody's ever done that, but there's no law as far as we can say against it. So I did that, and I got hired within 6 weeks.
Oh, right on.
And and then went from the lowest level position there to a senior level position in about 7 years of working that. So I often talk about it as my grad school experience. And that really, I got to do so much and learn so much doing that. I worked at this museum 4 years before it was built. It ended up evolving into a thing called Experience Music Project that was larger than Jimi Hendrix. But got to do a lot of artifact acquisition, exhibit development, shot a ton of oral histories with people. Just like, it literally was like school. It was like, oh, this week we're shooting interviews, and now I've got it's like taking a film class or doing this, that, the other thing. And got to start meeting a bunch of my heroes. And
who were they? Who were you meeting?
Well, the ones that kind of blew me away is like, some kind of smaller stuff, like in my indie world, like I went out to Minneapolis to acquire a collection from Grant Hart, who was one of the founding members of Husker Du, or, Peter Jesperson that put out the Replacements record. Just different people like that.
I knew exactly who you were going to mention. Yeah.
And then like going out to New York and like doing interviews with like Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC or things like that, where only, 8 or 10 years before I'd been standing in the audience watching him perform and being blown away. And now I'm like hanging out with myself and a camera person interviewing about him, about his history or whatever. And so that stuff was great. And then, post 9/11, there was some, in the cultural space, some evolution, just people weren't going anywhere. And they ended up killing my department, so I got laid off. But then I was lucky enough, I got recruited for a gig with the Grammys from there. Most people don't know the Grammys have 11 regional offices around the USA for different territories.
Oh, wow.
And so I ran the office in the Pacific Northwest for about another 7 years after that. And it's a membership organization, so it's facilitating all of the member activities of those things, and they facilitate the voting every year and the nominations and all that stuff, and then do a bunch of programs for musicians, and then just kind of kept going from there. And I have
a question about the Grammys.
Yeah. I don't decide who gets the awards.
Okay, so is it heavy when you hold it?
No, it is heavy. So
is it made out of plastic? What's it made out of?
It's made out of metal. There's a guy like out in Montana or something like that, that's family has been making them as long as the Grammys have existed.
That's a documentary.
And so, I think there is a micro documentary. You could probably look on YouTube or something. One of the fun things in the first bunch of years that I worked there, I'd go down for the show every year. And oftentimes I'd hang out and work with photographer Danny Clinch, and he took portraits of everybody after they won their awards. And so it was like going to the famous people zoo, right? You'd be there and it's like, oh, here's Jack White and Loretta Lynn. And then like, all of a sudden like Beyonce runs in and she's like, Danny, you got to take my picture. And I'm like, my job was oftentimes to be there and make sure that the Grammy is facing the right way for trademark in pictures. But
so which way does it have to face?
No, I'm trying to remember. It would be the bell needs to face this is backwards, the screen on me, so it needs to face this way, I think.
Okay. So
but no, just these surreal moments where you're back there and like, Paul McCartney's standing there talking to Jay-Z and, Beyonce and just like people like that. And you're sort of like, at a certain point, You're just like, they're just people.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just like a different kind of. It's like going to the zoo and seeing an amazing giraffe. You're like, wow, that is a really spectacular animal that I'm seeing right now, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Did you have any involvement, or what do you think about the Rock Hall, since it's from your hometown? Good, bad.
I think it's cool. So the museum that I worked with in Seattle was kind of like a bookend to that in some ways. Didn't have the Hall of Fame element, but the exhibits we developed were similar and stuff like that. I mean, I think it's cool. I mean, I think the weird thing about any sort of music museums is that the recording is the artifact.
Mm-hmm.
The song is the artifact. Anybody can go witness that. But it's cool to see all the other stuff. And I think culturally for us, it's a place for scholarly research, for conversation, all that stuff. I don't necessarily always love the gatekeeping that goes on with that, because music is so subjective. You could tell me about some artist I've never heard of in my entire life that means everything to you and your life. And so does the fact that they don't have a trophy change anything tied to that? And so it's cool. And then I think it's just funny seeing the raucous, or what do you call them, the people that get all bent out of shape when all of a sudden they want to give an award to Mary J. Blige, or to like hip hop or other artists. And it's just sort of like, it's like, okay, they could have named it something other than the Rock Hall, and then you wouldn't be complaining. But like, do I really need to hear that you're that upset that Jethro Tull hasn't been in yet, and that they gave an award to, Etta James or something? Like, it's like all valid, all great. And I'm sorry that the world it's not the 1950s anymore. But I guess that's a challenge that half of our country is trying to come to grips with right now, that it's not 1950 anymore. So.
Well, the fun part, I have to tell you this story. So I was teaching at RIT and part-time working at Target, and someone comes in, I look, and I'm like, wait a minute. It was Rick Ocasek.
Awesome.
And I said, Rick Ocasek. I took a picture with him, and I was talking to him, and he had just gotten inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame. So there's a bunch of Todd Rundgren fans were trying to get him in. And I was talking to him. I was like, hey, congratulations. Us Todd Rundgren fans are trying to get him in, even though he doesn't want to be in. He goes, who cares about Todd Rundgren? And I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, you got beef with Todd? And I was thinking about it. And he was in the new Cars. Todd Rundgren.
I was going to say, I think that's probably more the issue. He's
and
like,
that was
eating out of my pockets.
Yeah, but it was fun to be able to chop it up with him. And he's got a Cleveland. He's got Cleveland roots. He got his start in Cleveland, which I didn't know.
He actually went to Antioch College, where I went to school for.
Wow! Full circle again. Wow.
Yeah.
Does Antioch have something to do with? For some reason, I'm thinking of abolitionists or women.
Yeah, it was one of the first colleges to let, I think, women and African Americans go to college. Okay. And then Coretta Scott King went to school there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, layered history.
So that is part of your DNA.
Yeah, as did the Twilight Zone, Serling.
Yeah, Rod Serling.
Rod Serling went there.
Yeah.
And so there's an episode in one where there's a clock for the Miami Bank or something that was on the wall that was in an episode that everybody geeked out of over the years. Like, hey, did you ever see that Twilight episode with the clock?
That was like his shout out back to Antioch.
Yeah. Something.
That's dope. So, where do you think? Where's that question we ask?
All right.
I'm scrolling down.
Wait a minute, aren't you? What's the Sonic Guild? What are you involved with now?
Sure. So I heard about Sonic Guild a bunch of years ago, and being involved with them, I've been very active in our music community since the 90s, and Seattle has gone through this amazing growth spurt over that time with Amazon and Microsoft and all that stuff. And at a certain point, it's become so expensive to live here
Starbucks.
that most young creatives can't necessarily be here. And so I worked to bring this program to Seattle starting in 2019, and we launched actually right 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. But basically, we're a 501c3 that works as a granting organization to give grants to musicians, things like make records, go on tour, professional services, any of that stuff. Anything to help move a career forward. Sometimes that's paying your rent or your phone bill. It's like any of those sorts of things. And so we gave out this was our 4th year giving last year. We gave out $100,000 in grants last year. We've given out probably close to $500,000 since I've started. We just introduced a new tour support grant line that's going live in 2025. And so it's like finding ways to capture dollars from the corporate sector, the government sector, private individuals, all that sort of stuff that believe in the future of music and get it to musicians. And they can get some benefit from the donation of the tax deductible side. We can help musicians, and hopefully it's mutually beneficial and that our city doesn't turn into a cultural wasteland.
You should become the new Bill Graham and do your own version of, like, Fillmore East or Fillmore West. Scrape the pockets of Starbucks, Microsoft, and whomever else.
I'm trying, Gabe. I'm trying.
Well, let me. I just got a degree from the Shug Knight School of Negotiation. Hey, let me come out there. Come to a couple meetings with you.
All we need is a balcony and about 10 minutes, and we can make a lot of stuff happen.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'll tell you just one thing that you might appreciate. So when we were talking to labels back in the day, for some reason we hip hop labels that wanted to get into rock seemed to be our specialty. So we went down and had meetings with Priority Records at one point. That was and the day we were in there. Yeah. The day we were in there, Ice Cube was there because he was picking up it was like his quarterly check or his thing, and he was in a great mood. And he came in and he talked to all of us and stuff. And he was like, "This is the best label ever," just sort of stuff. And I was like, "All right." And then conversely, we got flown out to Philadelphia to Rough House, which was
Joe
Fuji's,
Nicolo,
and all that's the Goats and a bunch of stuff like that. And it was actually driving up to Columbia Records in a limousine with the guy that ran that label when we found out that Kurt Cobain killed himself. And it was wild because it was sort of like, I wouldn't be in this car right now if it wasn't for Kurt Cobain. And this is all just weird. So, anyway.
Yeah, man. I got, you're talking about musical artifacts and stuff and collections. I believe I have original Basquiat record I got from Amoeba out there in San Francisco. It was, unfortunately it was from, it was the wrapping is off of it, but it was $7.99. But since then, I know the Basquiat estate has, put out reprints of the record and stuff like that. I need to get that appraised. But
you totally should. The true heads probably can look at there's the little engraving around the label and stuff, where they can figure out that stuff. Yeah. Or the people that are hardcore, they use black lights to look at the cover, and they can tell how old the ink is. It's amazing what people can do with some of that stuff.
Yeah, so I gotta look into that.
So what do you think about the state of music, the art form as you see it, the business?
I'll be the first to say that I mean, there's more great music now than ever, right? It's just harder to sift through, is one thing.
Yes.
So we don't have some of the same gatekeepers deciding the 6 songs you're going to hear for the next 2 weeks that they'll play, that they'll play the 6 new songs and the 8 old ones every hour on commercial radio. The thing that I don't love is that we always talk about, you get to a certain age and you're like, music was better back then, right? Just because I think music represents to us important times in our life, right? So you're listening to some song that you listened to in high school or middle school or when you got married or anything, and you're like, that is the best because it makes you feel something. And I guarantee you that anybody that's in middle school or in high school now or getting married they're going to feel the exact same way about the song that they're listening to at their thing. And that's the magic of it, right? That mere mortals can go into a room where something didn't exist and create something in a minute or an hour or a couple days that'll make people feel something, move the molecules around in your body. And that's what's amazing about it. And, sure, I like more organic stuff that's made by people, less so than tracks, but it sure is fun to go dance to EDM or something like that. That's just a different experience. But, I remember our parents' generations telling us that our music was terrible and it was noise. And I don't know. I don't want to return that favor to my kids or their kids or anything like that. So.
No, have you influenced your kids' musical tastes? Are you into? Have they turned you on to any, or do you have kids?
Yeah, I've got a son that just graduated from college and just moved down to Portland, and then my daughter is a sophomore right now. My son probably likes more like mainstream hip hop and stuff like that, which is awesome. And then my daughter probably has more aligned tastes with mine, but she's a DJ on the radio station up in Bellingham, where she goes to school and stuff like that. And
oh, that's cool.
So she's trained me on all the stuff, and even kind of got me to like dip back in with Taylor Swift at one point, because I had kind of like, oh, Taylor Swift, whatever. And then again, I had to take a step back, think about my biases, and was like, any musician that's making this many people feel good about something is amazing.
And
right?
and that emotional attachment will be with them forever, no matter what.
You get the feels, man, the goosebumps. It does that.
It's body. Like Gabe, I forget. Did you go with us when we went and saw the Victory Tour? Were you with us down at the stadium?
No, I don't think I was. Yeah,
because I think about Taylor Swift is just this generation's version of Thriller, right? Or Michael Jackson, where you just like, could anybody be bigger than that?
Well, you got to frame that properly because you got the other side of the coin.
Beehive,
Beyonce's, the Beehive.
Oh, right, yeah.
No,
I guess I'm just, but
yeah,
I'm an equal opportunity lover, man. It's again, the fact that you could get anybody to argue about music at all these days is well worth it, right? And so it's there's a reason that I still love doing what I'm doing, and like I said, I get more excited. I go to big shows like Green Day played at the stadium here the other night, right? My band opened up for them when they played in Seattle on one of their first tours 30 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
But I still get that feeling, that molecular moving religious feeling when I'm in a room with like under 250 people, seeing somebody that's just starting to find themselves and hit that thing. And right? Like you can see 10, 20 artists, but one just seems to have the light shining down from the heaven and the pixie dust falling upon him. And you're sort of like, why am I drawn to this person?
Right. Yeah.
What is it about it? Or when you hear a song, like you don't know what they look like or anything. It's just like, why is this song making me feel something? And that's amore.
Yeah. Would you ever, run a label? Like if the opportunity presented itself,
I guess in the right sort of business model, I might think about it. In essence, it's kind of what we're doing with Sonic Guild right now, except that we make no claim on the future earning potential of any of the artists that we support, right?
Yeah.
The music business as a model has been built on exploitation. Just think about all those stories of, blues artists or Chuck Berry. It's like, hey, you got a #1 record. Here's the keys to a Cadillac. And then it turns out that the guys that run the label own the publishing and make all the money on it.
Yeah.
For years and years after that. So I'd rather try to lift musicians up where they're in a position where they can have more equal negotiations if they want to work with a record label and share in the bounty. Because I think there's very great commercial relationships you can have in that way.
Yes.
But to me, they work best when they're mutually beneficial and it doesn't feel like one side's just getting exploited.
Do you feel, I know like the buzzword, at least a couple of years ago, was like blockchain. Did you see any of that like connecting with the music industry, with artists and their work or anything? Or was that just... a lot of hypothetical.
I think it's a lot of hypothetical. I mean, I'm sure there's
Yeah.
something out there, and I make no claims to know everything, but
Right.
you know, they come up with a new delivery mechanism every couple of years or try to sell us something, right? Because part of it's a way to resell you that same thing again that you've already bought. Like, you know, at one point when streaming came in, people were like, why? I don't want to rent music. I don't, you know, which is in essence what you're doing. And then people are like, in essence, you've been renting music all along. You owned that Beatles record on vinyl. You owned it on 8-track. You owned it on cassette. You owned it on CD. And now you own it on streaming. So you've been renting it all along. What I tell a lot of people, and I think, is that a really good song solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
In that nobody ever goes to buy something just because of the format it's on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, maybe when CDs first came out, you'd get one of those sound effect CDs or something, just so you could hear how it sounded or something like that. But for the most part, people buy music because they love the music, not because of the box that it's coming out of or something like that.
So then what's up with these folks that, like, I'll see like albums online. It's 24 kilograms, you know, it's like 24 kilogram weight, vinyl weight, and you know, like
it's just audio file. I mean, I think I've got no problem with that. I mean, it's like if you have the dough to spend and you want a big Macintosh tube stereo with the right weight vinyl and the turntable, it's like any kind of obsessions. I'm sure you know people about that with their car. You know, I've got this vintage car that I spent all my time working on, and I need just this right part or whatever. Does it get you to Walmart any faster than your Ford Fiesta or whatever? But you feel better doing it. So I'm a believer that music's for the people. If the fringe folks want to do stuff like that, then let them have at it. Better that than probably collecting guns or something like that.
So how does your organization work? I was thinking of the Ohio Arts Council. Is it modeled in that way? And how do you choose the people that you work with? Because I'm assuming you have limited funding. How does that work?
Yeah. So the way that what drew me to this model, because we've been trying to find different solutions for this for a while, is the realization that musicians need a lot of support, but they need money, right? More than anything. You can give them education, things like that. And operating capital, it's like getting a small business loan or something like that. So what they came up with, the folks that started this organization in Austin, was they were like, what if we created an organization where our donors or our members, not the musicians themselves, but music lovers, paid a fee, like, so that's $750 a year for a fee for a member to join our organization. And in exchange for that, we curate monthly private concerts showcasing emerging talent, you know, so we're being the curators. So you're not having to go on Spotify and look into millions of songs. And then our members nominate, along with the public, artists for consideration for grants on a yearly basis, as well as all of our past grant recipients. Because we didn't want a situation where if only those that had the disposable income were deciding what the music is, you're not going to get the variety of expression that you might when you're capturing more people. But at the same time, we need to raise the money that supports the artist grant. So the musicians themselves have a voice, the public has a voice in nominations, and then all of those folks vote, and then we award those grants. Now, in addition to that, we never ask musicians to pay for free. We pay them to play at all of our shows. And then we introduced some other lines as well. So we just announced last week, we're introducing in 2025 a tour support grant line that's application based, that basically any artist that's going on tour from then about 90 miles of Seattle can apply for that to get funding to support that. And then we have other opportunities. We're doing a community impact grant for the good works that musicians are doing in their community. And that's underwritten by a third party. And so we find different ways to partner or collaborate with other organizations and funders to, in essence, just trying to Robin Hood it, right? Like if we can dip into some pocket over here and be like, hey, Amazon, give us some money over here. And then we can get into the musicians' pockets over there. And that's all good. And that's, I mean, you go back to the Renaissance, whatever. There was a time of patronage that's always been part of it.
Yes.
I'm just trying not to make people have to dance too much for it. If we don't.
No, I respect that. Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
I think the Sonic Guild could have traction down there.
I think it probably could. So we started in Austin. We're in Seattle. We have a chapter in Colorado that hasn't been getting as much traction as we had hoped. We're trying to figure that out right now. And then we just did a pilot program with the Walton family, the Walmart people.
Yes.
In Arkansas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So our goal long term is to try to build this model and extend it where we could build a network of these chapters around the country, because then not only are you helping music at the local level, you're providing resources to artists when they have to go out and start building scale and touring to other markets. Columbus has a great music scene. I mean, it's a college town.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Columbus is probably the dominant city in Ohio at this point, right? In terms of size, industry, and all that stuff. So, yeah, it'd be great.
I'll connect you offline to somebody to talk to.
Yeah, great. I mean, and unfortunately, we don't. Sometimes people think that we have like a magical benefactor in the sky, like somebody's gave us a giant ceremonial check for $1 billion or something. So we kind of have to go raise the money that we give away. But the more we can show how that model works, the more other people can maybe take those tools and do something similar.
Yeah, the reason I said Columbus because they have the Greater Columbus Arts Council, and they are very, they're very artist advocate in terms of doing a lot of things with Columbus arts and artists and stuff like that. So you never know, could be some synergy. Yep.
Yeah. One thing I commend you guys from doing this show, and it's awesome. But one thing I think you should add to the mix on here is you should ask each attendee to give you if they had to give a song for their class playlist. You need to get a Spotify list going of all this.
Oh, that would be cool.
That would be brilliant.
The Shaker Heights Experiences May Vary, the album.
Executive produced by Ben London.
There you go.
Peter Grant, Shug Knight, London. There you go.
Hey, we want to.
I need to get my cricket bat.
Yeah, right.
we want to have an all-star jam at all these reunions. Get the bands back together. Wouldn't that be great?
It was such a joyful experience. I don't know. I wasn't sure what it was going to be like going back for the reunion, and I enjoyed it so much just because, when you wait till your 30th, people are exactly who they're going to be. People are comfortable with themselves, all that sort of stuff. But it was really awesome.
Are you coming back for your 40th?
I'm hoping to, unless work gets in the way. I'm hoping to.
Yeah, you're gonna have a kickball game. You guys have to play kickball.
I'd like, or as opposed to tackle football with no pads.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, shit. I'm looking, man. You're natural at this, and no surprise.
What was that new question we came up with today? You remember that, Gabe, when we were talking to Billy today?
Yeah. How did your experiences coming from Shaker contribute to your success as a musician, arts advocate, etc.?
I mean, I think a lot of that's just foundational. I mean, I feel if I was going to say what one of the benefits that I got from Shaker, or one of the major benefits I got from Shaker, and reading Laura's book and stuff as well, is just that the privilege that I have of growing up in that environment that looked more like then what the world looks like now, right? I just went off and met people in college, other places of life that just came from such homogenous backgrounds that a more diverse world just felt really out of place to them. And, and again, no way am I trying to say that there weren't issues and problems. I mean, that's a given. Mm-hmm. But I mean, with me arriving in 78, I wasn't there. And granted, as a little kid, I wouldn't have probably known anyway for any of the hard work that people did before that. And it was more the benefit of just rolling in there. And, you know, like I said, the kids on your block, the this, that, or the other thing. There wasn't that, you know, and so that has influenced my ability to travel in the world of music and interact with all kinds of people and different things like that, and in business settings and all that. And so I'm very grateful for all that and what it's provided to me.
Are you in similar settings? Do you live in diverse communities or environments now?
I do. So I live in a suburb. We live in a suburb called Shoreline that's right next to Seattle, kind of like Cleveland Heights was to Cleveland or something. And Seattle is a very, if you didn't know better, in many parts of Seattle, you'd think you were in the suburbs, right? It's a very kind of a residential city. We have our areas, but one of the reasons we chose to live where we live is that it was more diverse as opposed to some other outer ring suburbs. And I don't know, in my mind, this didn't totally come true. In my mind, I was like, I want my kids to be able to like walk down the street and hang out with the kids they're going to school with and play with them, not knowing that by the time my kids were kids, they'd only want to be in front of the computer and playing Minecraft.
Yeah, right.
So there was none of this like come home and the street lights go on sort of stuff that there was when we were kids.
So what is your worldview when you look back at what you grew up in and the environments and the things that were going on? Compare and contrast to, you know, you've got, well, your kids are older, but what are some big differences that you see?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, the world it's probably really the same. It's really different at the same time. I mean, it kind of, if anything, bumps me out that people don't need each other as much in the real world as they used to. I mean, there's challenges like in the entertainment, the cultural space these days about getting people to actually go out and do stuff post-pandemic. Because we all got super used to like cocktails are a lot cheaper at home and Netflix always has something on and things like that. And then one of the biggest drivers as well is that you used to have to go out to a show or a club or a bar if you wanted to meet somebody, like for dating and things like that. And now you can just dial that up at home if you want to. Not that I do. I've been married for quite a long time. But but that sense that, so how do we find that connection? You know, what are those things that bring us together? And I've gained an appreciation. I mean, I've always liked sports. How can you not, growing up in Cleveland? Can't root for the Browns right now, as long as Deshaun Watson's quarterback. But I'll get back there as soon as.
Yeah, understood.
But you know, that brings people together, right? And that there's some sort of common thing that you can talk to some random person on the street, like, see the game? Hey, how about those Seahawks or something like that? And I don't know, you guys might appreciate this. So when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, whenever that was, 10 years ago or something, and there was going to be a big parade, and I said to my wife, I was like, I'm going to take the kids out of school and take them to the parade. And this was before they closed the schools down for everybody for the parade. And she was like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. And I said, look, I grew up in Cleveland. This may never happen again.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like when the Cavs won, you know.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Oh, we got a question that came up. Where was Ben before Shaker?
So I moved around a little bit. My dad was a college professor, and so I spent the bulk of my youth in Champaign, Illinois, where the University of Illinois was.
Okay.
But I also spent a year in Del Mar, California. So San Diego, he was teaching at UCSD then. And I was born in Northampton, Massachusetts, where he was teaching at Smith. So.
Okay.
You're like a military brat.
Yeah. Traveled around.
I am.
Wow. And shout out to William Billy Abshaw, executive producer. Yeah. So
nice.
Thank you.
Let me ask you guys a question. So what was it, reading the Laura's book that was the impetus for this, or did you guys just start having discussions offline and thought this would be a great podcast? And I mean, Gabe, I know you've been doing all kinds of media stuff in different ways throughout your whole career. I'd love to know the background of that.
Well, I think it was the book. Eric and I found, we met on Facebook, or got reacquainted on Facebook. And then, just over a series of conversations about growing up in Shaker and, our respective and shared experiences. Then, reading the book, we started chopping it up about the book. And then Eric had done podcasts previously. And then it just became this evolution into like, we should do a podcast about the other parts of Shaker that, that the author didn't have access to or wasn't a part of her bubble,
Totally.
So
have you thought about having any students, or maybe not, you'd want to be over 18 probably, but like recent graduates or anything to come?
Yeah, we're actively supposed to get somebody on. Dave Udoff referred us to somebody, and we're looking.
He's coming on the show too.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. I saw Jimmy Capoletti talk about that, and I was like, "Oh, Dave, yeah, that's right, I remember him."
Yeah, man. Yeah, he's coming on November 24th. But yeah, we're open to getting younger Shaker people just to provide that contrast to then and now and stuff like that for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I mean, who knew? I mean, it's a labor of love for us, so we enjoy doing it, and and for me, it's it's important, like media archiving and documentation, because we grew up during a special time. We're at the dawn of the information age. You think about the computers that we had at Shaker and worked on, and where we at now, and everything.
Yeah, it just seemed like a ripe time to do this because as I was seeing things that Gabe was involved in, and he has very dynamic experiences in his life. And I was trying, he probably doesn't remember this, I was trying to push him to write a book about our experiences as Shaker, as Black kids coming up and through integration. And then just it came to fruition and he told me about the book. And I said, we got to go. We got to do something. And then we decided to do it in our 40th anniversary year this year. So we started in March, I think.
Yeah, March. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like once a week for the most part. Yeah.
I mean, the hardest part is just starting something, right? I mean, it's like, the one thing about the internet that I am not a fan of is that it's made everybody that's a creator feel like they have to market to the world immediately, right? And so it's like the thing about organic growth is really awesome. And I think that you guys are really gathering some great content and capturing stories, and probably just the connectivity amongst the small group of our graduates and things like that is going to be very, very valuable. And so again, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I also feel like I think we're, for Eric and I, we're really blessed to be able to do this and tap into, all the people we've been able to tap into. And, we know that people they'll listen, and it's still about getting people to, subscribe and everything. And, the fact that we're on Spotify, you can listen at your leisure and stuff. You don't have to watch us on video, but this is also good. I like the ability for us to have multiple streams to, share these experiences with.
It's very cathartic as well, because I was a very shy person. And I'm always bragging. I live in Rochester, New York, and anyone I come across, or I always say, hey, they're from Cleveland, or they're from my high school, Paul Newman. So now I've got this thing to present to people, and we're always finding these things just in stories with, like David Embry, who knew that he was Earthquake's manager, who he met in the Air Force, Not to say that you have to know all these prominent and famous people, because the stories go so much deeper than that. I mean, it tells a story about the 70s and integration and our community being the model for that. And then just cultural exchange, me talking about rock and roll. And then when I talk to just in Ohio or anywhere else, people are like, "Wow, you know that song United? You know, by Judas
Oh
Priest?"
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, Eric, the counterbalance of that is, sorry that I was sharing. So because my dad was a musician and a French horn player, he two experiences I'll share. So one is he got to play in the Love Unlimited Orchestra when Barry White came to town when I was in sixth grade.
Wow.
I don't know what he was thinking. He brought me along, and I stood side stage at like the music hall, or no, the public hall in Cleveland, and watched, this show happen, not really understanding anything that was going on, which was awesome. Conversely, I remember going with, I think, Mel Arnwine to see Luther Vandross when we were like seniors in high school.
Luther,
and I rolled down to the public hall, and I was wearing like a ratty shirt and some shorts and some stuff like that. And it was probably one of maybe like 5 or 10 white people in the entire arena. And only then, and people were dressed to the nines, and only then did I realize that I was insulting the attendees there by my disheveled dress for where they were going to celebrate Luther and on their date night, right? And like there's certain life lessons in these different rooms you go into where it's like, well, if I'm going to go be a visitor here, I need to make sure that I'm following the rules and paying tribute to the people that are there doing their thing, right? And so
you need to take your ass down to merry-go-round or Oak Tree.
I needed double time. I needed to. Yeah. There were so many looks of just like, oh no.
But I mean, the fact that you went, that's the beauty, I mean, that's the beauty, as a true artist you are, and being, just open, like, I mean, that's the best artists anyway, the ones that just take in everything.
And it's amazing. Do you ever listen to Questlove's QLS?
Oh yeah.
Man, I love his show. Just listening to, hip hop artists and hear what their influences are. Or Ice Cube, being or Chuck D being design students and so forth and so on.
There's always the art school to music.
Yes,
that's strong.
Talking Heads is the poster child for that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I got lucky at one point. Like, I think I was a senior, and I'm gonna forget this guy's name. He had graduated, but he had like a music project, like a Prince thing, and was trying to go on Star Search or something. And he asked me if I'd play keyboards in his band or something. And went down with him to see Levert play. I mean, I knew Sean and Gerald from growing up, but this was like before they'd blown up. So this was probably 84, 85. And they were playing at some African-American small kind of bar club in East Cleveland, and rolled in there and saw them. And they were doing like they had a couple of their songs. I think they had I'm Still, like that single was maybe about to come out. Okay. But they were doing like Morris Day and the Time covers and stuff like that.
Man, to have a copy of that.
And again, to be into a space where somebody, white kid from Shaker Heights probably would not often end up, and being brought in there and welcomed into that environment and witnessing. I mean, that was amazing, right? So I feel so lucky for a lot of those kinds of experiences that I had growing up.
It's like Animal House, when they go see Otis Day in the Night. Hey, Otis!
Yeah, I chose not to take that tack.
Well, I'm so.
But they were great too. I mean, that was the thing. Is like, I mean, there was no there was nepotism there, maybe in the DNA. But Sean and Gerald, they could sing their asses off.
Just think about how segregated music was. I'm surprised that as we're circling back, John Denny was influenced by Mike Chapman and Levert. I didn't know that you guys had that interaction later on. I thought you were siloed to rock music or pop music, and it's good. It's good that we took full advantage of that experience.
Actually, Gabe, I'm thinking about this. So there was a point when like Purple Rain came out, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I saw it the night it came out. I was visiting my brother up at the University of Michigan, and we went and saw it the night it came out. But then that tour happened, and back when we had to you couldn't order tickets online. You had to go wait out. A bunch of us waited out all night long to get tickets, and he was playing 2 nights, and I got tickets to both nights.
Wow.
And I ended up getting mono. To this day, it's one of the things I'm most pissed about. And I couldn't go to that show. And I think Gabe, you might have ended up. You went to that show. You might have ended up with those tickets.
It may be because I went with Ty Bassett, Ashley Imus, and Christine Corbacero. Yeah, and it was wintertime at the Richfield Coliseum. Yeah, I remember getting stuck.
I saw pretty much everybody else from that period I needed to see.
Yeah.
I didn't see Prince on the Purple Rain tour to this day. I'm pissed about that. So.
I saw Prince. Okay, here's my Prince story. I knew Ty Bassett loved Prince, and Lorena Stearns. Lorena Stearns, you remember that name? She's graduated from 83.
No.
So, Public Hall, first leg of 1999 tour.
Oh, yeah.
I got third, fourth row seats because no one was going. It is before the record hit, the album hit.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go see Vanity and became a Prince fan. That's how far removed I was from that. And after that, I was sold, man. You can't see it, but I have a shrine of a huge Prince Sign of the Times World Tour poster that I bought at, you remember those giant posters they would sell at stores? I don't know how much that's worth, but I'm glad I still have that. But yeah, that was a lifelong. The last time, I saw him in Vegas for the 3121, and I think I saw him afterwards. But man, I have this I love music. I have a guitar behind me that I've tried to learn how to play. I just don't have the I want to play it too fast, and I'd rather go do artwork than play.
It was just I'm sure it happens now, but it was just a funny time where, like, overnight they went from selling the red Thriller jackets at Davy Jones' locker to the frilly pirate shirts that Prince was rocking in Purple Rain or whatever. And then, everybody had their camp. But again, like back then, I just felt like we were like almost the prototypical iPod generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it'd be Prince one night. I mean, I guess that's MTV, right? Because like we'd be going out to the Coliseum to see Prince one night, and then Duran Duran the next night, and then David Bowie the next night, and then New Edition the next night. I mean, I remember going to see Madonna at the Public Hall, and the Beastie Boys opened up, and Rick Rubin was DJing.
Wow!
So, and the record kept skipping, and Mike D Adam Yauch said something like, "What? We can't come to Cleveland and skip our records? Well, fuck you," or something like that. And we're like, "What? You can talk like that?" So
there's this great website called Setlist FM, and you can go back to set lists and concert venues from ever. So I didn't know. I could have sworn I saw the Tattoo You tour in '81. I saw Journey that year, but I thought I saw Foreigner and Rolling Stones back to back, and we did at the Coliseum.
I saw that Tattoo You tour.
Yeah,
I remember Gabe, were you there? At one point, I remember the Arnwines. They had a party, and they were buying the pay-per-view so we could all watch it on TV.
No, I don't think I was there for that. Yeah,
we had a bunch of kids in the basement, and then the pay-per-view didn't work, and we were trying to watch it through the line. That was
yeah. Did you go to the concert? Because we had to send away for concerts, for tickets. And then
did you do like concert club or something? Oh, yeah.
No, well, there's the Belkin Club, but to go to concerts like that, you had to send away for them and then be picked out of the hat. And I was nosebleed seats way up behind the stage. And Mick and the boys had to come around and play for a while and then go back around.
Oh yeah, I remember that show being the first time, like in my young mind, that I kind of realized what it sounds like on the record and what it sounds like live is two different things. Because at least the night I saw them, it was not very good. Like, I mean, it was cool, but it didn't sound like the record. And then actually on every tour after that was like the last of the skeletal version of the Stones before they added more musicians on stage and stuff like that. But man, like as old as they are, I saw footage of them from Jazz Fest in LA or in New Orleans this year, and they didn't have their full production because they had to play on the tiny little stage. And they sounded great.
Yeah, they do. I mean, those musicians, man. I just saw ELO, the final tour.
Oh yeah, I saw them on their last tour. It was great.
Yeah, I drove up to Cleveland. I've been up to Cleveland past month, like to go see concerts.
Well, let me ask you guys this:
Unbelievable.
what was your first concert, Gabe? What was your first concert you ever saw?
My first concert I ever saw may have been it might have been Prince at the 1999 tour at Richfield Coliseum. I think that was that was probably my first official concert.
Cool. What about you, Eric?
The Jackson 5 at the Ohio State Fair.
Oh man.
And here's a story. So my sister, we went with some people from Akron, and there was this girl who had a way of getting backstage every single time.
She was a very freaky girl.
So she was a teenager, and she brought her sister, and she talked to the guard, and they were going to go behind stage. And they said, "Where's your little brother, Eric?" I was 5 or what have you. "Go get Eric." My sister went to get me and tried to get back behind stage and couldn't get back in. So everyone else went and got to meet the band. And she did it because she had to go get me.
See, that's love.
That was one of the things I remember growing up and meeting people that it's.
Go ahead, what?
Like classmates of ours, I remember people that had seen the Jackson 5 when they played at like the front row or something, like where we graduated from high school. Like, you remember that place with the revolving stage?
Yeah.
You know, and I think they played there at some point. Oh, yeah.
What was your first concert?
The first concert that I went to where like I asked to go or wanted to go was I went and saw the Captain and Tennille.
Oh.
Third grade or something.
75. That's 75. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Wow.
But the first real rock concert I ever went to, and I'll try not to incriminate anybody in this, is we went to Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult's Black and Blue Sunday at the Richfield Coliseum, which was a seminal night for me on a variety of things. I think it was the first time that I did a bong hit in my life, which horrifies me now, being a parent, thinking about my kids smoking pot when they were in 7th grade. And it was so loud. Like back then, you know, you'd have like the stage and then the seats. And like usually they put the speakers on the stage, but the speakers were right next to the seats. So I was like literally like sitting like speakers right next to my head.
Yeah.
And so the sensory overload of that, the marijuana, and then the fact that Ronnie James Dio, the singer of Black Sabbath, was into a lot of sort of satanic sort of stuff and is a very strikingly, you know, some would say not good looking man, like sort of standing up there doing that stuff. And it was too crazy. And then one of the people I was there with thought it was a good idea to bring a knife with them to the show because they thought they might be violence. And as we were walking out, the security apprehended us and we had to wait for them to get like written up and a bunch of stuff like that. So it was I got it all in one night. It was pretty good.
Wow. my favorite Jackson 5 memory, I have to say this. Easter Sunday, 1979, the Jackson 5 were trying to not be a Vegas act, and they were touring. Mm-hmm. Michael Jackson was just coming out with Off the Wall, and they were touring as the Jacksons, and he was doing a set of Off the Wall, and they performed 2 shows that day, and my friend and I were in our Easter 3-piece suits vests. And my mom took us, and that was just, I'll never forget that memory. That was great.
I mean, there's nothing like seeing people in their prime, right? There's bands I've wanted to see that I didn't see at the right time. I had Public Enemy when like Nation of Millions came out was like one of my records. It was just like to me, it brought everything together.
Yeah.
You know, the dissonance, like everything. I'm glad I didn't. Anyway, I'm going.
Public Enemy at the front row was a disappointment, and I said I'd never see another rap concert because Flavor Flav was drunk and was preaching, and they were barely doing anything.
I got
Well,
a
it's maybe
flavor
good.
story for you.
It's maybe good I didn't see them then, but I was the luxury of booking them to play at the museum where I worked in
Oh, wow.
2004 or something like that. We got to have lunch with Chuck. You know, it was just like one of those things where, and actually I think their manager might have been from Shaker at some point. He was older.
Well, you know, Jerry Heller was from Shaker.
Oh.
NWA's old manager.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. Ruthless. Yeah. And so, but they were as good as like. Literally, it's one of the top 10 shows I've ever seen in my life. Professor Griff was back in the band, and they had brought like a rock band with them that Professor Griff was doing something with them, and backed them up. And so they have all the tracks of the songs, you know, but with a band as well. Yeah. And it was literally just it was transcendent. I knew every word. I was just like losing my mind. It was the best.
I have this funny Flav story from MTV days. So we used to do a thing called Live Friday. So we would have a group come in on Fridays and perform. You know, it was live to tape. So they were doing Can't Trust It. Flav is, you know, doing his thing, and Crack Vial falls out of his pocket on stage. And people caught it, you know, because they play it. Whenever they do an MTV retrospective, they play it. But you see this little Crack Vial. And, you know, he just kind of picks it up, and Chuck was just like, it's just so over it. But
well, you know, being a professional musician, it's a fraternity, you know. Like, so when I booked Public Enemy, we booked Joan Jett and the Blackhearts the night before, and Flav showed up the night before. We didn't know he was in town. Like, knocks on the door. You don't need a backstage pass when you're Flavor Flav. Everyone just knows you're supposed to be there. They let him in, and he was there to hang out with Tommy Price, who was playing drums with Joan Jett, who was like in Billy Idol's band, and you know, just one of these New York musician guys.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, Long Island, in a lot of ways, is like some parts of Long Island. It's like a sister city to Shaker in some respects, but just in terms of the music scene, particularly hip hop. I mean, you know, you could go down the list: PE, PMD,
De La,
Rakim, all that. So
totally.
These pockets.
Were you at UMTV Raps or something when Wu-Tang was starting to happen?
Yes, we did a Live Fridays with them. They did the Mysteries of Chess Boxing, and then they did Method Man. But right when they were, you know, on the come up, we broke Diggable Planets as well on the show.
Yeah, well, Amir lives here in Seattle.
Yes. I know Ish, Shabazz Palaces. I like their music.
Yeah. He does A&R for Sub Pop Records as well. So he's, you know, what a great artist. I mean, guy that is, you know, a lifelong artist, and makes Shabazz stuff is as interesting as anything out there. You know, or I shouldn't say interesting. I use that as a positive, not as a negative.
No, I totally get it.
So great.
Well, we're gonna wrap it up, man. This has been. We could probably talk hours of music, hours and hours of music.
Who would you like to have? I know we talked about. I love, if anyone knows where Bob Griffin is. I know he's Todd Lane's stepbrother, so maybe we could get him through Todd.
Yeah, Todd Lane's coming on the 27th of October.
Oh, that'd be great. You know, I haven't really kept up with Todd, but you know, I know that you know, how cool was that they kind of left school to go out to LA and try to make it back then. And you know, I know he's had a long career working in music. Dave Richmond might be somebody to talk to.
He's on the show. When's he on the show?
We got Dave Richmond. Let me see. Let me look at the calendar here.
I got it. October 20th, Sunday. Yes. Todd Lane's on the 27th.
Cool. Trying to think who else.
We got Jeff Watkins on the 6th. I don't know if you need Jeff Watkins.
Right.
General.
And you said you got Lee Mars, right? And you already got John Denny. I mean, I remember seeing Attic. Did you guys ever go to the Well? It was like there was a church over by Van Aken that did.
Yes, I heard of. Yeah.
And another thing I referenced that like you didn't need much to give the kids something to do, but like a bunch of people tried to form bands and stuff just to play in that basement in that church.
I think it was St. Dominic's, right? Or was it that not Plymouth Church, but the other church on Van Aken in Avalon or something.
Totally.
Yeah.
But
speaking of musicians, we got Quentin Rubin.
Oh wow!
First,
we played in like high school orchestra together. It's a bass player, right? I don't know what he ended up doing.
Oh no, he's a guitar. Yeah.
Oh, guitar. Okay.
Yeah, that's like if your sonic guild continues to expand or whatever like that. I mean, that would be definitely be an artist to embrace.
Well, at some point, for one, I kind of wish when they did the reunions, they were in 3-year blocks, because I don't know anybody that just hung out with the people in their class, right? So it would be fun if everybody was there together. I'd say we could get an all-star or a musician's owner jam session of some sort.
Make it a yearly thing. I mean, the way things are going now, you can't guarantee that the next year is going to be possible. Let's put
Promised.
it that way. Promise.
Amen.
But Eric and I have been talking about, we're definitely going to, in the new year, do like a shaker band show where we get, like all you guys on just to chop it up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll probably migrate over to Zoom because of more seats.
But Greg Young, Rob Barrick, Steve Smith, have you reached out, or Daryl Swan are all guys?
Yeah, Swan. We've reached out to Swan. We just haven't heard back from him yet.
All right. I'm trying to think who else was in that orbit.
Have you worked with those guys as a professional? Have you come across them?
I haven't. Joe Solo, or Doug Klein, now known as Joe Solo, came to Seattle 5-10 years ago. He was doing like a seminar or something, and we worked together, and that was cool. I mean, I was always rooting for those guys, and when I heard about it, and same with like Dave Richmond, I think was playing with some folks. I don't know if I have this right. Was maybe in the Lemonheads for a hot second back in the day,
really?
Or something. And
wow.
It's awesome when I hear about anybody that's doing that stuff, and then always felt great pride for Levert. Like granted, I wasn't totally following the New Jack Swing thing when that took off, but when they were in New Jack City and like all that stuff, I mean, it's awesome.
Yes, New Jack City. Yes, classic.
Yeah, for sure.
The clothes alone.
Even though, like, I'm not gonna bump a Machine Gun Kelly record in my car, but I'm psyched for the dude. And if he was,
yeah. I just hope he's managing his money and everything right. Just
you think there's so much information out there about how you can do it wrong. People would figure that out, right? About the money.
Oh
stuff.
Yeah.
It's a tough business, You always think the next record's going to sell better than the last one, and it seldom does.
Yeah. No.
And the expectations are so high, it's almost hard to repeat, catch lightning the second time, I just think of albums that, like the Fleetwood Mac album, the Tusk album was a disappointment after Rumors, It's just crazy what the music industry expects.
Well, it's a tough thing too, and I know we're going to let you guys go, but like, it's like being a professional athlete where what if the height of your career happens when you're 23?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to live the rest of your life after that? So not everybody can manage that descent in that same sort of way.
Makes me think about that Tom Petty song, Falling.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, here we are. Well, Ben, it's been a pleasure having you on. And, nothing but the best. Continue constant elevation for expansion. And it is the Shaker Heights Experiences May Vary show, bringing you another episode on a Wednesday night. Sunday, we have Lorna Wisham.
It's hard to track down, man.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
Yes. The ephemeral Lorna Wisham. So join us Sunday at our usual time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And check us out on Spotify, Amazon Music, the Podcast Index. Or check us out on YouTube if you like to watch us. Thank you again for all your support and all the people who tuned in.
Thank you.
Until next time, God bless. And we're out of here.
See you Sunday.
See you Sunday. There we go. Peace.